Now it's time for our Commitment 2010 coverage, and this week we're interviewing the candidates for Congress, and this morning we have Ed Case, who's one of the candidates. Good morning, Ed, and thank you so much for joining us.
Morning, aloha. Good to be back.
Thanks. We've always been having all of the candidates pretty much every month, and there's a big deadline coming up, April 22nd. Do you have any concerns about voter registration? Because, turnout is going to be a big factor in this race.
Well, I just want to make sure that all the voters are registered. The deadline for the special election registration is just 2 days away on April 22nd. So if you have any doubts whatsoever as to whether you are registered to vote, you need to check that out right now and get it done. If you're registering for the first time, then please get it done, because what I really don't want to have happen is that people get into the vote and then discover they're not registered to vote. So do it right now.
All right, voter turnout, always a big issue. One of the big issues on Capitol Hill right now is financial regulation reform, and it pretty much is divided along party lines. Where do you stand on this pretty massive bill?
Well, I don't think that you can take a look at what has happened in the last couple of years and not conclude that we need better regulation of the financial industry. I mean, essentially, we had highly risky loans that were made to start with that really overextended borrowers, overextended the banks, and then the banks took that risk and bundled it up and gave it to somebody else. And earned huge fees in the process. And so the entire system was designed to really, not designed, but what was incentivized, I should say, to provide highly risky loans that you then didn't face the music on, and that clearly cries out for regulation. Now, with every regulation, you've got to be focused on exactly whether you have the balance right, because what we don't want to do is to have over-regulation, overcompensate, and chill the financial industry. That's not going to be good, but we do need some basic reforms and regulation.
Major reform has just passed on health care. Do you have any concerns about that other massive bill that just passed?
Well, sure. I mean, I think clearly the cost side of it was not finished in terms of the business that we need to complete. So, issues such as reform in our litigation system, providing greater competition in the healthcare industry, reining in those costs, which are still going up at somewhere around 10% a year. Now, if we don't rein that in and bring that under control, we will not realize the full benefits of healthcare. So, it's one of those huge bills that you pass it, okay, it's passed, but the work is not done. You've still got to go up and clean up what you didn't finish.
There's some new private polls coming out that show that you and Republican Charles DeJoux are basically neck and neck, with Colleen Hanabusa just trailing slightly. And our KITV poll, the first one that came out, showed you in the lead. What do you make of the fact that your other two opponents are making gains?
Well, we've believed for some time that this race was going to come down to a choice between me and Charles. And actually, Colleen has not made any gains. She's probably spent about, $500,000 in the last 4 months, and she's no higher than where she started back in October. So from our perspective, this is a very practical choice for the voters at the end of the day between me and Charles.
But when, we talked to our political analyst yesterday, and he said when you factor in margin of errors, that the three of you are actually in a three-way tie.
Well, I think that's really going to change in the next couple of weeks. And I think for all voters in Hawaii, on election day, they're going to ask themselves, who can best represent us in Congress? Is it Ed Case or Charles DeJoux? And that's exactly what the choice is going to be at the end of the day.
With this deadline coming up and the race almost coming to a close right now, you don't have as much money to spend as your other two opponents. Analyst after analyst say that money does count no matter what the politicians say. So how are you going to remain competitive in these final weeks?
Well, we are definitely seeing a huge uptick in our contributions just over the last 10 or 12 days as people do in fact focus on this race. And yes, I have been outraised and outspent, but it has not been special interest money from the mainland. We've been funded almost 90% plus by folks right here at home that want change in Washington, want change at home. We are going to be competitive right until Election Day. I'm very excited about this, and we're going to have the resources we need to get our message out and to win.
What do you make of the donation that Senator Daniel Inouye made to the Democratic campaign, National Democrats, the DCCC? What do you make of that donation? It was about $100,000.
Well, he hasn't contributed to the DCCC for well over 10 years now, and I really can't speculate on his motives, but I think people can pretty much figure it out. So we're going to leave it to the people of Hawaii to decide what they think.
He endorsed Colleen Hanabusa, and the DCCC was, as we heard, was reportedly leaning toward you for an endorsement.
Well, I think the DCCC has figured out a long time ago what we figured out, which was this is a practical, realistic, down-to-earth choice between me and Charles DeJoux, and the DCCC would prefer me over Charles, and clearly that's where they have gone. That's where they are going right now.
All right, Ed Case, thank you so much. Really appreciate seeing you,
and
we will see you the next time when we interview all of the candidates.